early age. It could be, but there's more to the story than meets the eye. So get your pencils out, because I'm doing this series to find out, did Don and Candace have anything to do with their child? The highest chance of a child being kidnapped is so low than a parent or family member or close member. So I'm going to be doing a series on parents who murder their children. What I'd like you to do is, if you want to, is join Open Doors podcast. When we go live, we will be doing series on this. And what we'll be doing is looking at the way they look, the way they act, where they come from, how they speak. Also, when it's been described, when they find the baby, stuff like that, the way they react. Can they act? Is it a good actress? Do you see something in there that will associate that they could do this? Are they guilty? Are they not? Do you think the jury was wrong and the judge was wrong? Also, the Summer Wells case. See this tattoo? You've seen it before in Mr. David Dodson. Okay? Now, Mr. David Dodson has had this tattoo. According to Christopher, this tattoo shows you where you are in the prison order and what you do, i.e., if you've got it on your face, you are a bruiser. A bruiser meaning someone who goes out and, bruises, if you like. Then you'll also have one that is like on the arm, which is the intelligent one, the one that does all the collecting the money, collecting debts, stuff like that, writing it down. The geek, if you like, the bookkeeper. Okay? Take a check at David Dodson's. So if you get pen, pads, and let's sit down and go through these parts. We're going to do it in series. So this is series 1, part 1. McNab and Bell's trial. Okay? It's day 1. They streamed it live on the 7th of May 2019. Okay? These both parents have pleaded not guilty. Now, I'm going to skip you all the preliminaries because they talk to the judge, stuff like that. However, also there was something, and I'm going to put you straight on to the actual opening statement. So here we go, guys, right? So now we're at the interview. The father is there, the mother you will see in a minute, and we're going to go to the opening statement, okay? Now, the judge is just told the jury, accepted the jury, told the jury what they can and can't do, what they can and can't see, and it's going to do the opening statement, okay? So let's go to the opening statement and let's continue.
The witnesses aren't speaking loudly and clearly enough for you to hear, let me know, and I'll make us all speak up and do better. Also, let the record reflect everybody shaking their head no, so let's keep that going. And I'll try to remember to ask y'all and remind you at the end of
Now, I want to put it forward that this lady had carried this child for 9 months, then killed the baby within 2 weeks. Now, she denies, not only did she know that he did this, but they're both innocent. See how she reacts and tell me what you think, okay?
the day. Okay, that's going to conclude. One other thing I want to tell you, and you've already known this, while you're on break, anything back there in the way of soft drinks and snacks are free of charge to you. And if we run out of anything, just let the bailiffs know, and they'll replenish those supplies. With that, that's going to close my opening remarks. We'll turn now to the attorney.
Now, through the trial, I would like you to get pen and paper, and I really, really want you to write it down, because we will be doing Open Doors podcast on these. Our goal is to see if these parents that do this to these children, do Don, Candace, people's behaviour the way they act to prevent this happening anymore. Number two, and the most important thing, has any of these child killers got anything in common with their behaviours with Don and Candy? Don and Candy's just a victim of an evil person, or is the way they lived, they behaved, they acted around their children caused Summer to disappear? Could there be a certain trait? Because it isn't normal, especially for a mother, to not have that instinct to protect her child no matter what. So are we going to hear the excuses of woe is me, I had a bad life, I was on drugs, I weren't loved, I couldn't get shown love? Nothing like that. We're also going to meet the parents of these, just like Grandy's, and see how they behave to their grandchildren, their own children. Do you agree? Can a mother's instinct be blocked because they weren't shown how to love? Or is love a natural instinct that we all have inside us? Your comments mean a lot. Your thoughts mean a lot. Open Doors Podcast respects that. So please like, share, subscribe. And this is the first day of this trial. We will be doing a series. So this is series 1, McNabb and Bell trial, day 1, live streamed on the 7th of May 2019. Here we go, my friends.
Attorneys, if they wish to give opening statements, and by law, we'll start first with the state.
Good morning. On September 23rd, 2017, at 9:53 p.m., Kalia Claire McNabb came into this world weighing 6 pounds and 6 ounces. She was a little premature, but otherwise a healthy baby. The evidence will show that just 14 days later, her father, Christopher Michael McNabb, ended her life so abruptly and with such teeth came through her gums and into her tongue. You'll hear that she was then later left out in the woods, wrapped in clothes and a blanket. She was stuffed into a bag. She was put under a log, in a hole, and left out for strangers to find. The evidence will also show that Courtney Bell was too busy smoking methamphetamine to protect her child.
Now what I want you to hear is also write down the actual drugs that they smoke. Could this be significant to Summer's case? Could methamphetamine make a person lose that mother instinct, that father instinct, that love, that care, devotion? Could it make them angry?
You'll hear that during the 14 days that Kalia was alive, Courtney and Chris had her maybe 4 or 5 of those days. And during those days, they would drop her off with family members during that time. You'll hear from Megan Sorrells, who is one of her cousins who Kalia was going back and forth to. The first thing that you'll hear today, or one of the first things that you'll hear today, is a 911 call from October 7th of 2017. And Courtney Bell will say that her baby is gone. You'll hear that the last time that she saw her 14-day-old was at 5 a.m. And when she woke up at 10:30, the child was missing. You'll hear
Now remember, Don and Candace, remember, Don got up in the morning, he went to work at, he says 5:30 one minute, he says 7:30 the next, and 8:30 and 8 o'clock. So you choose which one. But he said that's the last time he saw Summer. And Summer had a leg under his back, or it depends on which one, the story, or over his leg, depending on which one you want to hear.
she called her friend Missy, who came and helped her look. You'll also hear that Chris then runs into the woods. He runs into the woods to look for his 14-day-old baby. You'll hear from multiple first responders, the deputies that came out on the scene at first. You'll hear that Christopher McNabb showed up about 40 minutes after they had been on scene. You'll hear that he was wet and muddy from going through those woods. You'll hear from different family members of Courtney Bell, and the reason I put this up here is to sort of give you an idea of how this is going to play out. There's a lot of different names to hear. There's a lot of different people who are related, so this is hopefully going to make sense as we go throughout the day. You'll hear from Tim Bell, Courtney's father. You'll hear 911 calls from about 5 days before the baby went missing, where Courtney and Chris and Tim were having a disagreement over the children. Tim didn't feel that they were safe where they were, so he wanted to take them back. You'll hear from crime scene technicians and investigators about the steps that they took to find baby Kalia and the steps that they took after finding her body in that drawstring bag. You'll hear that both defendants were interviewed. Listen closely to those interviews and listen to the changes throughout them and the inconsistencies. You're going to hear that eventually they narrow that time frame, the time frame that they at first said they saw her at 5 a.m. and she was gone at 10:30. You'll hear them narrow that down to about a 30-minute time frame of when that baby could have gone missing.
Now remember, similar to Candace and Don's, right? Did Hawkins County interview Don and Candace this way? Have they been interviewed this way? Or was it true what Don said, that the police went up to him, interviewed them in the house together, and gave Candace alcohol?
30 minutes of broad daylight when that baby went missing. You'll hear from people who are riding in the car with Courtney and Chris the next day, when Courtney gets a call that the baby's been found. And at that moment, Chris jumps out of the car and runs.
Now hear that clearly. It took them only a day to find the baby in the woods, in a bag. So just put into perspective, a 2-week-old baby was found in one day in the woods, in a bag, a normal sports bag, that was found by strangers walking their dog. So my question would be, how? It's in the middle of the woods, it's in a hole, there's a bag. People would look at it and think, oh, it's someone dumped their bags, or it's someone who's homeless, right? No. They called 911 immediately and found the baby was inside, wrapped in all his clothes. But how's that possible? The people would have had to open the bag, look inside, see a load of clothes, because that's the way they portrayed it to look, and open it up to see the baby there. So if that could happen in a woods
he says they're going to think I did it. You're going to you're going to see some Facebook records that show conversations between Courtney and Chris, the co-defendants here, and you're also going to see conversations between Chris and a woman that he was talking to the morning that his child went missing.
Now remember, Don and Candace also had a Facebook page, and Grandis. They also talked amongst Allison, Hunter, and many other people on there.
During a time when he says he was asleep. You're going to hear from the medical examiner, and she will explain to you the type of injury that this baby had to her head. She'll explain to you the type of force that was necessary to inflict this injury. I expect that throughout this trial there's going to be some people that you don't like. You're going to see that Chris and Courtney weren't living the most savory lifestyle. They were surrounding the people that they were around are not going to be people that most people would have a 14-day-old baby around. But we're not going to sugarcoat anything for you. We're going to show you exactly how this baby was living. I expect that you'll hear from Courtney's mother, who you'll find out real quick is never going to win mother.
Now I need you guys to understand and write down, please. The living situations in this child was point to point. Summer and her brothers live. Okay? Now, we won't be showing you the pictures, but you will hear how the baby was found, what the baby was wearing, and the injuries. So if you want to skip that, you're more than welcome to.
Mother of the Year award. But what I ask you to do is put those emotions aside and the frustrations with the people aside and listen to the evidence. Look at the physical evidence and listen to the words of those two defendants. Listen to how their stories change and use your common sense. Christopher McNabb is charged, as the judge has already stated, with one count of malice murder. Okay, that's for intentionally or unlawfully and with malice aforethought, which will be explained later down the road, caused the death of Kalia McNabb by inflicting blunt force trauma to her head. He's then charged with 2 counts of felony murder, and those are basically charged as during the commission of a felony offense that he did cause the death of Kalia McNabb. The 2 separate felonies are aggravated battery and cruelty to children in the 1st degree. Aggravated battery is described or is charged as maliciously causing bodily harm by rendering Kalia McNabb's brain useless. And cruelty to children is charged as causing cruel and excessive physical pain by inflicting blunt force trauma to her head. He's also charged with 1 count of murder in the 2nd degree. And that's by inflicting those injuries to her head. That he did that with negligence, which is different from murder in the 2nd degree. He's also charged with 1 count of cruelty to children in the 2nd degree for negligently causing cruel and excessive physical pain. Lastly, he's charged with concealing the death of another, and that's that he did unlawfully conceal the death of Kalia McNabb, which hindered the discovery of whether or not said person was unlawfully killed, for hiding her inside of that hole, inside of a bag. Now, Courtney Bell is charged with 1 count of murder in the 2nd degree. As I explained earlier, that's negligently causing the death through committing the act of cruelty to children in the 2nd degree. And cruelty to children in the 2nd degree is, again, that she negligently allowed Kalia to suffer cruel and excessive physical pain. She's lastly charged with deprivation of a minor, or contributing to the deprivation of a minor, where she did unlawfully fail to provide proper parental care or control for Kalia McNabb, and such.
So, this was what Candace was charged with her first children. Okay? This is why her first child and her baby 6-month-old was taken off her through this charge. The reason why she wasn't put in prison was because she went against her husband and used the fact that she was beaten
that without adequate supervision necessary for a child's well-being, and the said act resulted in that child's death. As you sit here, I encourage you to take notes on those notepads that you have, because the court reporter can't go back in the room with you and read back everything that we've talked about. I know on TV they'll say, read back for me what so-and-so has said. Well, that doesn't happen here. You won't get to go back with the transcripts. There's going to be a lot of names. There are a lot of people in this case. So I encourage you to use those notepads and take notes and pay attention to what's going on out here, because when you go back in there, you'll be left with your collective memories and what you've written down and what you can remember from what happened out here. Today is the day that you hear the case against Christopher McNabb and Courtney Bell. But it's also the day that you're hearing the case of Kalia Claire McNabb. I ask that you give this case the attention that it needs and deserves, and I suggest to you that at the conclusion of this case, based upon the physical evidence you have, the testimony of the witnesses, and the interviews of the defendants, the state will carry its burden and prove this case to beyond a reasonable doubt. And at that time, Ms. Zahn will come back up here and ask you to find the defendants guilty on all counts. Thank you.
Mr. Carter?
Thank you, Judge. Christopher McNabb had absolutely nothing to do with the disappearance and death of his daughter, Kalia. If you truly sit here today and you enter with the presumption that Christopher McNabb is innocent, and you hold the state to its burden of proving him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, the just verdicts and the true verdicts are going to be not guilty in this case. As you listen to the evidence, I'm going to ask you to do what anybody else who is trying to solve a problem or make an important decision would do. You want to look for the who, what, when, where, how, why of this case. You want to know who killed Kalia McNabb. You want to know what happened that day. You want to know when did it happen, where did it happen. You want to know how it happened, and you want to know why it happened. You're going to hear evidence today about physical altercations between Christopher McNabb and Courtney Bell. And you're going to hear evidence.
So, to stop you there for a moment so you can have a little break, what I want you to do is, what do you think? Right, we're looking at Summer Wells here, okay? So, as well as this case, what it deserves, a 2-week-old baby, we're also looking at the close generation between these child murdering parents to the case we're on now on Mystery Angels with Summer Wells. And he's right, we do need to know who, where, when, how, why. Okay? So hopefully at the end of these series that we do, we might have a better understanding and might be able to pull together and actually look at everything Don and Candace and Grandis and all the people around, like Robin and everyone, and we might be able to even come to a conclusion. But at least any knowledge is better than none at all, right?
Evidence that they and their friends used drugs. I expect that the state is going to rely heavily on these two facts to try to convince you that Christopher McNabb killed his daughter on October 7th. But the real question is what happened between 9:30 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. on October 7th, 2017. The evidence is going to show there were 4 people in the home that night. There was Christopher McNabb, there was Courtney Bell, there was Clarissa McNabb, the 2-year-old daughter, and then there's Kalia McNabb, the 15-day-old daughter. Chris and Courtney put the girls to bed around midnight for the last time. Kalia got up several times. She needed to be changed, needed to be fed several times. But around 5:30, they put her back in bed, and they laid down on the couch. About 9:30 that morning, Chris got a text from his dad letting him know that he had sent him some money. He said, "Are you awake?" And Chris said, "Yes." Chris got up from the couch, walked into the other room, and found that Kalia and Clarissa were both fine. Laid back down, fell back asleep. Less than an hour later, Clarissa, the 2-year-old, comes and wakes her parents up. And she says, "Sissy gone, Sissy gone." So they didn't quite understand what she meant, so they got up and they checked. And sure enough, Kalia is gone. Without a trace, she's gone. From that point, a huge search was conducted, and unfortunately, Kalia was found less than 900 yards away from the home the next day. I think one of us talked about watching the first 48 hours, how important that is. But what happened in the first 48 hours of this case is the police determined that their suspect was going to be somebody close to the child. Certainly, Chris McNabb and Courtney Bell are the closest one to the child. And they focused like a laser on Christopher McNabb as being the person who killed his daughter. In fact, they developed their whole case around the supposition and the hypothesis that Christopher McNabb is the one who killed his daughter. And you know why they did that. Look at him. Look at the way he looks. Look at the fact that he had physical altercations with Courtney. Look at the fact that they did do drugs. Of course they're going to look at him. But pretty soon they realize they cannot prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. And you're left with a difficult decision in this case because there's the evidence that you don't hear is much more important than the evidence that you do hear. When a pack of lions go after a herd of gazelle, they don't go after the smartest gazelle. They don't go after the fastest gazelle. They go after the gazelle that is vulnerable, the gazelle that's hurt, the gazelle that's not as smart as the others. And that's what the police did in this case. They went after the people who were most vulnerable in this case, the people who had just lost their 2-week-old daughter. Now, I honestly do not know what happened in that trailer between 9:30 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. on October 7th. But I'll tell you this much, neither does the state. And at the end of this trial, neither are you. Judge, I was going to tell you that a reasonable doubt can be based on the evidence in this case or the lack of evidence. And at the end of this trial, you're going to be wanting more. At that time, I'm going to ask you to bring back verdicts of not guilty on all counts for Christopher McNabb. Thank you.
Mr. Frost?
Thank you, Your Honor. Please, court, counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Good morning. I introduced myself to most of you during the jury selection process. I am Brian Frost. Together with my colleague, Tyler Carey, we represent Courtney Bell. We are here, obviously, for a terrible, terrible reason today. I want to thank you on behalf of my client and really the entire criminal justice system works because of you and your duty that you provide here. I know it's not the most fun thing ever, but it is essential, and it's essential to my client today. Here. My client sits over there shrouded with the presumption of innocence. You heard Ms. Zahn say that yesterday. That is the truth. You heard Mr. Carter echo that again. The state does have the burden, not just of proving every charge, but of proving every single element of every charge that they have indicted her on. And that is beyond a reasonable doubt. That is no small burden. Now, they say they've accepted that. We shall see. Some of the things that I want you to, that I would ask you to pay particular attention to are not just the evidence that they put in, but the things that you don't hear, the things that leave you with questions, thinking, I wish I had that answer. Those are critical things. When Ms. Stone stood up and said, you're going to hear this, you're going to hear that, she also didn't say, you're going to hear my client make a 911 telephone call right about between 10:30 and 10:45. So those are the kind of things that I'd ask you to pay close attention to. Again, Mr. Carter said they are going to smear the character of our clients. This is, I can't speak for both clients, I only represent Ms. Bell, but they truly are going to do that. They are going to bring up things like they called it an unsavory lifestyle. I'll leave it at that. That does not make her a murderer. So please keep that in mind. Please don't rush to judgment. Listen for the cross-examinations. Listen again to the things that you wish you would hear I know that sounds strange, but look for the things, I guess. Think about the things that you don't hear so that you can contemplate those questions later on down the line. What I don't believe you're going to hear at all is any evidence whatsoever, direct or indirect, that my client had anything to do with this heinous crime against her daughter at all. So, with that said, I ask you again, please pay particular attention. I see you have your notepads and pens. I'm going to ask you to do something, if you will. On at least one of those sheets, draw a line down the center. On the left side, whichever side you prefer, but say the left side, make notes of what you think is evidence the state has given you. On the right side, list the questions that you're left with for the defense. And we'll talk more about why I've asked you to do that and how those lists come out when we reach closing. So with that, I thank you again. Please keep an open mind. Don't rush to any conclusions. And again, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, you may call your first witness.
State calls Christian Favors.
I do.
You can have a seat. Make sure you pull your chair up and get close to that microphone. Will you state and spell your name for the record?
Christian Favors,
And Ms. Favors, where are you employed?
Covington Newton 911 Center.
And what's your position there?
I'm a 911 operator,
How long have you worked there?
10 and a half years.
Okay. And can you explain briefly like what your duties are through your employment?
Answer non-emergency and emergency phone lines and dispatch emergency personnel fire, law, and EMS.
Okay, and were you working in that capacity back on October 7th, 2017?
I was.
And while you were on duty on that day, did you receive a report of a kidnapping in the Eagle Point Mobile Home Park?
I did.
Okay, and is the Eagle Point Mobile Home Park, is that located in Newton County?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and who,
Right. So you guys heard that very clearly that it's 2017, okay? 2017. It's taken them 2 years to get these people there, okay? 2 years for the state to put the evidence together. Just keep that in mind, write that down. 2 years. Now this is the 911 batch caller who took the call from the mother, Courtney.
have to press a button to record, or does it automatically record?
It automatically records.
Okay, may I approach?
You may.
Now, what I'd like you to do, guys, is to listen to her carefully on what she's saying, because when we hear the 911 call from Candice, and also there was a 911 call to Don, all we've got is the 911 dispatch call that is clear, that talks about the actual, when the police got there, right? So listen carefully and write a few things down. So when we do eventually get to hear the dispatch, then maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to know a bit more.
All right, I'm showing you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 19. Do you recognize this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. How do you recognize it?
I initialed it and listened to the call.
Okay. Did you review the call?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you reviewed it, did it appear to be a fair and accurate depiction of the call that you received on October 7th, 2017?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Your Honor, attender State's Exhibit 19.
No objection.
Submitted without objection.
Your Honor, I do have transcripts, so if I may pass those out at this time.
Ladies and gentlemen, you receive these transcripts. Human nature is that you want to read them. Don't read them. These are aiding you as the voice comes out. If you hear something and you look down on the transcript and it's different, don't pay attention to what the transcript says. It's what you hear. So I can't have you reading ahead, number one. And secondly, as I said, if you hear something different than what's on the transcript, it's what you hear that matters, not the transcript.
Your Honor, I have State's Exhibit 20. It's a copy of the transcript for the record.
So the reason why the judge says that is, let me give you a little hint. So when sometimes you use the transcripts when you're writing as well as speaking, right? Like you're doing a book or you're doing an assessment or something like that, and you're writing in, is supposed to write it down. What happens is what you're saying and what you're writing might not come out right, and it might not be exactly to the point. Because this is a murder trial and 2 people's lives are in here, and a child's already, life has been taken, 2-week-old, what they have to do is make sure that what they write in the transcript doesn't make them hear what's on the transcript. So for them not to read it means that they're able to hear whatever the voice says. So if the voice said, i.e., my baby's gone missing, I've gotten up, and the transcript says, I went for a walk, and then I come back and the transcript would be wrong, right? So he just wants people to listen to the voice rather than listening to it written out, because that could be mistaken. The voice at the time, at that moment, is the most important one, okay? Just for those who don't understand that.
Yes. Okay, you may proceed.
So we're going to leave it there for the introduction. This is series 1, okay, of Parents Who Kill. I'm Chip, your host, and this is Open Doors Podcast. And I hope to see you on the next one. Stay safe, take care of your loved ones, and remember, even if you have a child, you don't own that child. You're there to respect each other and bring each other up and protect. Be great parents, be great children to your parents, and be grateful you are parents and children. And we shall see you in the next podcast.